You got the call. Welcome to the big leagues, kid. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the call-up presented by Triple Play Fantasy. This is our last off-season episode before we finally get back to our regularly scheduled programming and in-season content. Really exciting stuff. We are so pumped. Before we get started and introduce the panel here, just a reminder, we are partnered with Underdog Fantasy. So if you use code TRIPLE at checkout, we will double your first deposit up to $100. So if you deposit $100, you get $100. Deposit $50, you get $50, and so on. Make sure you guys check out Underdog Fantasy and use code TRIPLE. Vinny and Mike both in the house tonight as we have a fun final episode of the off-season plan for you guys. Mike, how are you feeling today?
Doing pretty good. Like I was telling you before we got started, it's been a grind this draft season for me. I actually got sick for the first time in several years towards the end of it, and just kind of getting better right now. Really excited for the season to get started. Really looking forward to looking into prospects more and just having my mind focused more on that. And, excited for all the great guests we're going to have and the great season upcoming for all of us.
It's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited. Only half as excited as Vinny, though. Vinny's always the one bringing the energy, bringing the fire here. Vinny, how's it going?
Doing good. We're counting down, ETA, a little over 2 more weeks until AAA baseball starts back up. So it's right here. It's right around the corner. We have, opening day right around the same time too. It's baseball season again. It's time to focus on baseball.
Yeah, it's the WBC going on right now as we're recording. The U.S. going against Japan for the championship. So it's really exciting. It's kind of giving us that beginning taste of baseball. And we're hoping we can kind of be the entree with this episode to the main course that is the season. And what exactly do I mean by that? Well, we're today trying to figure out who's next. Who is the next blank? It could be the cover boy, Spencer Strider. Who could be the next Steven Kwan? Who could be the next Bobby Witt? All these impact rookies that really helped you win fantasy championships last year, changed your entire fantasy team. And a lot of times these players came at gigantic discounts because whether people weren't sure if they were going to be impacting you next or during the season, or people were down on them overall as just a prospect, all these players helped contribute for you in a big way. So we want to be on top of this and identify who those next players are. And we'll kick off the first one here with who the next George Kirby is. And Vinny, there were a couple guys you were deciding between, but you chose Gavin Williams of the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, my original pick for this was Gavin Stone, but I last minute audible to Gavin Williams. Gavin Williams, not as big as of a college that he attended before coming to baseball with Eastern Carolina, but a solidifiable front end starter, 4+ pitches, arguably, very good control, SP2 upside. Like if we're thinking just by that kind of projection, like he screams, maybe the next George Kirby. Like if we look at his stats this year in high A and double A, we're looking at a 12 K9, a 84.8% left on base percentage, a 37.7% ground ball rate. I think his fastball is going to be better than George Kirby's, but if you can't ask for anything better than the Cleveland Guardians organization, a starting pitcher, a right-handed starting pitcher, they've shown success before, Shane Bieber, Cal Quantrill, borderline Aaron Savali. Like the writing's on the wall, and let's just chase. You want to chase success. So I would say Gavin Williams, next year's George Kirby.
I love the call. Again, my prospect knowledge is only about maybe a third or a quarter of what your guys' is. And I'm very familiar with Gavin Williams. He's, I think, one of the next big things coming. He's shown excellent control, has a lot of good stuff. Obviously, the organization that you've talked about, Vinny, the Guardians showing just how they developed pitching. And I think people have been focused on Daniel Espino, and he's kind of maybe not for everybody, but maybe slipped under the cracks a little bit here. And I love the call. I think he's not going to be flashy, but he's going to come up and be a baller. So I love getting the show started here with Gavin Williams as the next George Kirby. What about the next Oneil Cruz? A player that could pop on the scene here with his athleticism, how hard he hits the ball, his speed. We're talking like a freak. And Mike, same last name, somewhat, and somebody that's also just physically just imposing when he's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't really a huge surprise. You know, we've actually made this comp before. I've seen others do it as well, but it's very accurate in my opinion. He's got the size, he's got the hit tool concerns, he's got the massive power and speed. He's a 6'5" guy who's stuck at shortstop, and he's basically got everything that we see that we like in Oneil Cruz and everything we don't like in Oneil Cruz. It's the same type of player, and I would even go as far as saying Elly De La Cruz might even have a little bit more upside than Oneil Cruz, which is crazy to say too, because he hits the ball as hard as anyone. But this is like a very rare type of player, just like Oneil Cruz. You know, it's still unknown whether or not he's going to transform into that monster that he could. But if the hit tool ever gets to a level where it's just not a concern, just like with Oneil Cruz and Elly De La Cruz, they're going to be perennial first-round picks in fantasy. And even the players that they are right now, with their concerns, they have so much power, speed, and just flashiness to their game. They'll be early round picks too, even with their flaws. So I just think this is a perfect comp, and anyone who's into Oneil Cruz should be into Elly De La Cruz even more, probably.
You think now with making this call, he finished the year at AA. Do you have a prediction for how long do you think before he's in the majors? Are we looking for a guy like in the second half of the season, or do you think he's risen up so quickly? And I believe just from us talking on the show, he was one of the biggest changes in prospect rankings from last year or from 2 years ago to last year. Do you see him making another big jump to where he could impact at the major league level for a good chunk of this season?
Yeah, I mean, I did look at the fact that Oneil Cruz didn't start in the majors last year. You know, he came up, I forget when, but, a little bit before midseason. And I could see a similar type of time frame for Elly De La Cruz and similar type of production. Oneil Cruz didn't have a big season last year. He showed flashes, but his overall stat line wasn't anything to write home about. And honestly, that's the kind of season I see coming from Elly De La Cruz if he gets up into the majors. I don't see it being a J-Rod or Bobby Witt type of breakout immediately. I see him getting a few home runs, getting a few steals, and people will be going into next season dreaming on the improvements he's made, and he'll be an early round pick the next year, just like Oneil Cruz is now. But yeah, I mean, long story short, Oneil Cruz as a special skill set. Elly De La Cruz is one of the rare people that has a similar skill set. So I just can't find a better comp in the minor leagues right now.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's going to be fantastic when he does get to the Cincinnati Reds, and I'm very excited for him. So a player that's very popular now in the fantasy sports community, and he's even done some podcasts. Hard not to like Vinnie Pasquantino. Vinny, the next Vinnie Pasquantino is
Kyle Manzardo. Now, some people would say it's Matt Mervis. Some would even stretch and say it's Tristan Casas. But if we look at what Kyle Manzardo has done, it's no question about it. Like, Kyle Manzardo may be the best first base prospect we've seen in 15 years. Like, he does everything very well. He hits for power. He hits for average. He's solid at first base. His arm is good. Like, the only knock against him is that he's slow and he can't run. But we don't need first basemen stealing bags. We just need a solid, everyday MLB producer offensively. And that's what you're getting with Manzardo. Manzardo's ceiling, if we're talking redraft next year, if he comes up, which there's a good chance he breaks camp this year with the Rays, his spring training has been flawless. Like, he's the type of, like, first baseman 3 off the board. If we're talking redraft come next year, if he comes up and actually, shows out like he has in the minors. Like, his ceiling is phenomenal. I would put him over Tristan Casas if we're ranking the first baseman prospects.
Mm-hmm.
I would have him over Casas. I would have him over Mervis. Like, all the signs are there. The organization loves him. There's a need for him. Like, they believe in him. They're willing to be aggressive and push him. Like, all the signs point up for Kyle Manzardo being Vinnie Pasquantino.
And again, also finishing at the AA level last year. And just looking at first base right now for the Rays, it's Yandy Diaz, who hits the ball on the ground a ton. And I forgot if he's under contract for a few years or not. I have to look at his contract on Spot Track, but that's not like they have a stud locked in at first base where he can't come in there and command at bats. Harold Ramirez DHing. There's paths to him to, if he's producing, for him to be able to get every day at bats at some position there. So I like the Kyle Manzardo call, and someone that you can expect to impact the team in a big way this season. This next player, everybody knows about at this point if you play fantasy baseball. And I think that's kind of foreshadowing for our next comparison here, Mike.
Yeah. First I should start by saying, I don't expect all of these players to actually reach the potential of these players we're comparing them to, because this was a pretty historic rookie class. But I chose as the next J-Rod as Jordan Walker. And I've liked him obviously for a long time going back, but there's just so many similarities. He had a really productive season in AA at age 20. He has underrated speed. He's got an underrated hit tool compared to where his scouting grades were. He's got big raw power. And we're kind of seeing it all play out in spring training. The same sort of path we were seeing with J-Rod. They started talking about he's going to break camp, and then his ADP started skyrocketing. And there's just so many similarities to the situation. And I'm not sure if the Cardinals are going to start him early in the year, but the Mariners didn't start the season with J-Rod either, if I'm not mistaken. Or actually they did. He struggled to start the year. But I expect Jordan Walker, if he doesn't start with the team, to be up early and be a regular. And I'm not sure what his season will end up looking like, but he's the closest thing we have to J-Rod. I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes an everyday player and puts up a 2020 type season as a rookie. I just think he's a really, really, really good player. Personally, I've never said this out loud until right now, but I rank him ahead of Gunnar Henderson on prospect lists. I've always had Corbin Carroll number 1, but Jordan Walker is my number 2, and I feel very comfortable with that. I think that's going to be seen as the common view down the road. So the next J-Rod from this class is Jordan Walker.
I'm 100% with you on this one. I don't know, like you said, it's kind of been said from a few others as well. His ADP, I believe, like when draft season started, he was going like outside the top 300, or if anything, he was going still like just inside it. Now, main event ADP over the last week that we're recording. Can you guys guess where he's going?
I guess around 130.
Vinny, do you have a guess?
I'm going to say, I don't know, 185.
He is going 122. So, Mike, you were very close. That's how much people are all in on Jordan Walker. That ADP is skyrocketed, like you said, Mike. I think people see this potential type of breakout in him. If I'm not mistaken, he was the untouchable in the Juan Soto deal when the Nationals were trying to trade the Cardinals. So, like, the fact that you could get the caliber of talent as Juan Soto, and you wouldn't have anybody up to be traded, that just shows you how high the Cardinals thought of Jordan Walker. And I think it's starting to show why. So I love Jordan Walker. I don't have any of him in drafts yet, and I'm very upset about that. He always goes earlier than I think he's going to go. But he's someone I'm very excited about, so I like the call there. The next player, Vinny, is near and dear to my heart because the player you're comparing him to is my favorite breakout pick for this year. And he also is a very nasty lefty, just like the player we're talking about here. So who is your next Nick Lodolo?
This one was close. It was between I picked Ricky Tiedemann, but Kyle Harrison's right there with him too in contention. But I had to go Ricky Tiedemann. You're looking at a 3rd round pick from a small school with 3+ pitches plus control. The kid's a beast. We've seen what he's done so far this spring training. This is his first actual spring training up with the Blue Jays as an on-roster invite, and he's already put on a show. He destroyed the minor leagues last year. Just the amount of Ks that I think he could rack up at the next level, I think is a little underrated. Like his K9 through this year was a 13, but it would not shock me because if his fastball is sitting at 99 now, I think we're looking at a 15 K9, 16 K9 type of talent. Like we're talking, if his ceiling was SP2 when his fastball was 95, there's a potential he could be the ace for the Blue Jays for the next 5-6 years. And if we're going to compare him more to Lodolo, he's in a way better situation than Lodolo is right now. Like the Reds are an absolute dumpster fire when it comes to talent on that team, besides, a few names. Tiedemann will be walking into a contender the second he gets up there, and he's probably going to see, if he comes up this year, he probably will see postseason baseball. Like if similar to Manzardo, all of the signs are pointing up for him, and I want in on Tiedemann before it's absolutely insane to get any pieces of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think was one of those players we were seeing flashes of when he was pitching in spring training, and we could see just how nasty he is and that he could be the ace of the staff in a couple of years just with how great he looks, the way he hides the ball, obviously the velocity, him coming across his body, everything. There's so much to like about him. And I think he's the next big thing that to the common fantasy baseball fan isn't 100% familiar yet. I think I've seen a lot more pitching prospects names float around more than his. And I think if he hadn't gotten hurt, his name would continue to be making waves and he'd be shooting up draft boards. So this might be the last chance you can get in on him before everybody knows who he is. So he's somebody that is very interesting. I'll be interested to watch how he develops and, just how quickly the Blue Jays call him up and him to impact this season. Mike, Steven Kwan burst on the scene last year and not only came up to where he was setting records with before he swung and missed at a pitch, but he became one of the best contact hitters in the game, a very valuable fantasy baseball asset. And there could be a Steven Kwan part 2 with this outfielder.
Yes, I actually feel like I'm kind of in Vinny's territory here because he's been so high on him, hyping him up for a while. But, I decided to go with Sal Frelick as the Steven Kwan for this year. I really like this kid. Vinny's mentioned all of it before. He's probably got the best hit tool in the minor leagues. He's one of those guys who barely strikes out. He's going to be an impact leadoff hitter. The one knock on him might be he's a little light on power. I don't think he's going to be a big 20 home run type of guy, but I think he's got more speed than Steven Kwan. I think he's in a better hitter's park when he gets up there. And this is a guy that I think is a legitimate chance to win the Rookie of the Year, just like Steven Kwan was in the mix last year. And he's someone that I see being in the contention for batting titles just throughout his entire career. I just don't think he's ever going to be someone that's going to be not able to make good contact. I basically, how do I put this? I see the hype going on with him, but he doesn't have the superstar allure to him. But this is just one of those guys that's going to be a massive part of winning teams. When he comes up, he's going to have a huge average. Like I was talking about a couple episodes about just like Yoshida being projected for a 300 average. Like this is going to be one of those guys that's up there with Luis Urias and stuff that impacts how you draft and what you can do with your batting average and stuff. So I just think Sal Frelick is someone that you should try to target aggressively in any league that uses batting average. And I think he's going to come up this year and be an impact player just like Steven Kwan was last year.
Yeah, the swing and miss in his profile very low, makes a lot of contact. Brewers also need hitting. He could be atop that lineup and score a lot of runs, and lot to like with Sal Frelick. And again, very similar profiles to Steven Kwan. So that's where a good parallel comes in. And I think, again, another name being brought up is Garrett Mitchell. And I think he's another one, Sal Frelick, that's a little bit less talked about, but it can also be very impactful in a different way for your team. So Sal Frelick is a good name to keep in mind if you have not heard that yet. But you also, again, mentioned that Sal Frelick was a Vinnie guy. But Vinnie made sure you did not get his number one guy.
Oh, yeah.
There is not a player that I associate more with somebody than Vinnie and Hayden Wesneski. And Vinnie's going on record making his claim that Hayden Wesneski is going to be the next Spencer Strider. Vinnie, the floor is yours because this is why people are tuning in. It's the thumbnail who the next Spencer Strider is. And this is the guy.
Okay. So Hayden Wesneski, if we're talking about most improved stock of, from last July to now, Hayden Wesneski's taken the one spot. He's absolutely dominated this spring training. He has 11 strikeouts in, I think, 13 innings. Like, he's just, his fastball and his slider are just absolutely nasty. If we're talking comparisons to Spencer Strider, they're both mid-round picks. So Spencer was a 5th, Wesneski was a 6th back in 2019. They both come from two organizations that are very good at developing pitchers, Strider being the Braves, Wesneski being the Yankees, then traded for by the Cubs. But Wesneski, very similar to Strider, he just strikes people out. Like, his K9 this year was 9.11, but he had a bad start of the season with the Yankees. Cold weather. That's always, an X factor in pitching. But if we're talking about everything else, like the ground ball rate, we're looking at a 45, borderline 50% ground ball rate, a 70. When he was up last year, his ground ball rate was at 84.5, or his left on base percentage was at 84.5. Like, if we're talking about someone who can impact a team and take over a rotation, Hayden Wesneski could be that guy this year for your fantasy team. Like I've been preaching this for, I think, almost 6 or 7 months now. But
Yes,
the hype has officially caught up, I think, because now everyone loves Hayden Wesneski. But he's just a special arm that you really do not see that often, similar to what Spencer Strider did. I think Strider has a better team behind him, though. That would be the only advantage I give Strider right now until we see what Wesneski does in a full season. But I'm taking the sneaky arm this year that could potentially win me a championship.
It is very frustrating. Vinny, you were the first person I saw that talked about him. And yeah, now he's not a secret anymore. And it stinks you can't get him at the value you did. But his price is still not as high as I think you would think it is. It's on main events over the last week. He's going at 282. Right after Noah Syndergaard, right before Sean Manaea. So he's still in the top 300, but it's not like he's going, as a top 150 pick or something like that. So you can still get plenty of shares of him if you want him. And it's just interesting because he was a Yankees prospect that they could use right now. And it's just interesting how whether it's they didn't see it or they didn't develop him the right way, that he's going on to this type of potential breakout. Yeah. So he is your guy. And if he balls out, I will be tweeting all the credit to you. And if he falls flat in his face, I will tell the trolls. I will tell the trolls to come to you. So
DMs are always open. I can love some trash talk.
I like it. We got 3 more guys for you all here. The next Bobby Witt Jr., Mike, is a player that was not expected to start the year with the club, but as Vinny reported before the show, it's looking like a 50-50 chance that Anthony Volpe will be the Yankees starting shortstop.
Yeah, I full disclosure, this one was probably the toughest for me to pick because, well, there were a couple of options. I also considered Jordan Lawler here, but Volpe, because of his recent emergence, as possibly making the opening day roster, the Yankees pretty much have a hole at shortstop. I do think they see him as their long-term shortstop over Peraza and anyone else they have currently going there. So it's really just about how quickly the Yankees want to start the clock. But I mean, as you can see, anyone who's watching on the screen, this guy stole 50 bases last year, coming back off of a breakout season. There's a lot to like here. And, similar to Bobby Witt, like he hit 248 last year, like there is some level of hit tool concerns, even though he had an under 20% K rate, this isn't like a Sal Frelick type of situation. Like there's going to be some strikeouts involved, and, and I don't think he's going to steal to the same level that he did in the minor leagues either once in the majors, but still, this is a guy who, if he gets the starting job, a 2020 season's within play. And, that's kind of what we got from Witt last year. He got 2030. Like I said, this was the hardest one because I think this is the one that's least likely to hit or reach that milestone. But if Volpe wins that starting job, as I said, he's the closest thing I could find in the minor leagues. Lawler's further away. He's only played a little bit at AA. I actually do like Lawler over Volpe long term, but in 2023, Volpe has a better chance. So that's my choice for Bobby Witt this season.
I've seen a lot of people say that Anthony Volpe could be the rookie of the year. I've seen people say that he had become the best value in drafts in terms of these players that can make an impact. There's also a popular thread that Ryan Bloomfield puts out every single year that he put out last night that he said there's been a first round caliber player going in fantasy leagues. I believe since like 2016, it's been a while, and they go after round 12. And the most popular answer I saw in that thread that has probably close to 100 responses is Anthony Volpe. So it just shows you the type of upside and ceiling that he has. And he could be a huge impact player for you guys this year. I am curious because I've been looking up the main event ADP because that's, the players that are putting $1,700 to draft, as Mike also is going to be in the main event. So I feel like it's also relevant. So this is kind of where if you're going to get your guys, you're going to reach a little bit. Anthony Volpe is going at 249.
Yeah, so, and I think that goes way up if they announce he's the starter too. So,
and just ahead of our guy Oscar Colas, Vinny too. So,
and same with all those guys. It's similar to we saw with that's where Julio Rodriguez was going before they announced he made the team. So even if they say Colas is on the team, boom, it's moving up.
Which I'll give a little insider to Colas. They did start putting up banners around Guaranteed Rate Field of Oscar Colas this week. So.
Interesting. Breaking news. A little inside scoop there from Vinny Schefter on the for Oscar Colas. I think we would be shocked if he doesn't make the team at this point. So enjoy maybe the little bit of a bargain left while you can. Actually two more hitters. I was going to say last hitter, but no. This is the next Michael Harris. A player that might rise up from, high A, double A, and maybe makes the jump that we didn't anticipate and comes out and just balls out in a bunch of different categories here. This is a name I've seen around for a while and used to be a New York Met. Now he's in the Chicago Cubs organization where Vinny keeps a very close eye on because that's his team. And he's a big Pete Crow Armstrong guy this year.
Yeah, drawing the comparison to Pete Crow Armstrong to Michael Harris, he was like the closest guy I could actually find in the minor leagues. Besides, I could have stretched a little farther and did Zach Veen, but I think I'm more set in on Pete Crow Armstrong. First round talent taken back in 2020 by the Mets. There were some questions around the bat. He quickly put those to rest, and then he ended up tearing his, I want to say his labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. Missed all of the rest of 2021, came back this year, was very, very good for the Cubs. He took a new approach at the plate, tried to see how much power he went power over contact. But if we're comparing the two, you're looking at Gold Glove caliber talent for both of them. You're looking at a starting center fielder for both of them. You're also looking at a leader on and off the field, which I think goes a little underrated when it comes to trying to project a prospect. I think that's a little intangible that I think goes under the radar. But yeah, if we're talking about the closest talent, I think there is a situation we do see him this year in Chicago. It probably will be late, but recently, as of this week, he has been up playing with the AAA minor league team. So that is something to watch because they have been very aggressive with Pete Crow Armstrong already in the 2022 season by pushing him from Myrtle Beach up to South Bend. But yeah, if we're talking about just a flyer to go on to have that kind of upside, Pete Crow Armstrong is the guy.
I love it. And he is basically free in draft. So this is one of the few players we've talked about so far that you can grab in towards the end of your drafts, and or maybe just keep an eye on the waiver wire, just see how he's doing. If if he doesn't start the year with the team, and if you see he's balling out, Double A or Triple A, wherever they start him out at. Just remember, Vinny was endorsing him for a big major league type impact, so you can kind of keep an eye on him and watch him as he's hopefully up this year with the Cubs and contributing. The last player, we got to obviously get a catcher in here. And Adley Rutschman is one of a kind, but there could be somebody that offers also a lot of great production at the catcher position, Mike. And the catcher that you should keep on your radar for the impact at the major league level this year to be the next Adley is?
I chose Endy Rodriguez for the Pirates. And, like you said, Adley Rutschman's kind of a generational type talent, but Endy Rodriguez is one of my favorite players, position just aside. He showed in spring training, he was like 7 for 17. I'm not surprised he got sent down. He hadn't played much in AAA yet, and the Pirates still aren't in contention. But, Adley didn't start with the team last year either. They slow played him. And basically, when he did come up, he was productive immediately. I expect similar type of results from Endy Rodriguez. I don't like the organization or the ballpark as much, but he does have the ability to move around to different positions too. And there's just not a lot of talent on that team. I definitely see him being a core piece for this team, like where they're just not going to be willing to trade him. And I could see him being in a prime lineup spot at some point once he's like settled into his things this year. I've mentioned this with like Bo Naylor and other players, but when it's his turn and he becomes a regular player, I think all the smart managers are going to want to get him on the team. And this is just a similar type of profile as Adley. He's got legitimate power. He's got a really good hit tool. He's not going to strike out a lot. He also doesn't have a ton of speed, but he's going to be productive. Like you can see from the stats there, 92 runs, 95 RBIs, 262 ISO, 162 WRC plus. Like he's ready to go. I think he could hit major league pitching right now. I think he's got a really big future, even as a dual position player. And I think he's the closest thing we have to Adley Rutschman as far as his potential and just overall profile. So that's who I chose for this season's Adley Rutschman.
Numbers are great. Pirates are devoid of talent, so they have a lot brewing in the minor leagues. And he did play multiple positions. So I know they have Henry Davis there, who looks like he's a little bit farther away from coming up. But the fact that he can move around the diamond a little bit too doesn't hurt, and get his bat every day in the lineup. I picked him as my third catcher in a DC 50 I did, just for that upside. And if he doesn't start the year with the club, I can stash him because I think he is going to provide a lot when he comes up. And I like the comparison there in terms of what he'll provide from the catcher position this year. But that's going to wrap us up for our Who's Next. Again, our last show before we actually can talk to you guys about actual stuff going on in the minor leagues in the 2023 season. We're so excited. If you guys have been enjoying the offseason content and are ready for regular season help and everything we're going to do, please make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. We are only about 40 subs away from 3,000. And if you guys like and share the video, that way we can get this seen by more people. Make sure you guys are following Michael and Vinny on social media. Vinny is at Down on the Farm 8, and Michael is at MP Richards 1981. If you guys want to ask them questions directly, make sure you check them out there. And yeah, we have a great show format lined up for this season. Tons of great guests. And we're going to help you win your leagues, help you get on top of your dynasty. Your dynasty leagues, make trades before your league mates know what hit them. We're ready for everything for you guys. So for Vinny, for Mike, I'm David. We'll catch you guys next time on the Call Up.